This is the CNC Router Tips Podcast, episode 59. Looks like an interesting machine. If this is one of their smaller ones, I know that they specialize in much larger machines. I'd kind of like to take a look at one of those and see what that looks like. This is the CNC Router Tips Podcast, a show which answers one question from you, the listener, about CNC router tables, CNC software, hardware, web hosting, and business. I'll help you get started in your CNC hobby or business and help you cut through the confusion.
Today's episode is sponsored by themakersguide.com. The Maker's Guide. Useful tools for makers.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the CNC Router Tips Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Griggs, and I'm so glad that you could join me today to talk about your CNC router table, your CNC milling machine, your CNC tools, anything that you would like to discuss in that area. I would love to talk to you about it today. It's been a busy spring in my shop as I get ready to do a whole bunch of new projects with both the CNC router table and the CNC mill. I've also recently begun adding a rapid turn, which is a CNC lathe attachment to my milling machine, so that I could do some other things interesting with the tools. As I explained in our last episode, episode 58, Adventures in Work Holding, I've been doing a lot with fixtures and work holding to try and automate some of the processes and make them more repeatable and easy as I go forward. So it's been quite a learning experience, and there's been a lot of little projects and things just to get to the point of making parts better. And I'm learning a lot of new techniques and a lot of new things that I hope to share with you over the course of the next few episodes, because I think that the things that you learn as you work through problems are some of the best things to share. And it's my intention to always share the best information I can with you about what it is that I'm doing and what has held my attention. One of the things that I've been using the router table for lately has been to make parts for other machines. You know, that's kind of what is cool about having your own tools, is being able to make your own tools and machines and things with them. It started when I first made parts for another CNC router table using my CNC router table. And, it hasn't slowed up any or changed up my style of things that I do. One of the projects I'm working on right now is called Streamliners. And Streamliners is something I saw over on the CNC Zone website. Now, for those of you who are really into CNC, you know that CNC Zone for a lot of years was the go-to resource for information about CNC projects of all kinds. Lately, the membership may have slowed down as a lot of people are moving on to Facebook and other social media platforms for everything, but CNC Zone still has a lot of information out there. The Streamliners are little panels that you put into the bottom of your Tormach milling machine to keep the chips up inside of the chip tray instead of going and flushing down the drain into your coolant tank. And the designer of them posted a little article about it on the CNC Zone website, and I read about that, and he made his out of aluminum and thin sheets of aluminum that he placed in there, and I didn't have any of that. And so I started looking around the workshop to see how I could implement this in my machine, maybe in a different way. And so I looked over at some of the materials that I've had been gathering over the years, and one of the materials I had was some Sintra, which is a PVC it's an extruded PVC that's often used for making signs. It's very lightweight, very strong. It's a closed cell. It cuts very, very nicely and very easily with, just your regular router bits. And so I started looking at these streamliners, and I said, well, if I combine some aluminum angle iron with a piece of Sintra, I can make these and install them in the machine, and it should make my life easier. And so I started looking at it, and of course it was too large an area for me to make on the milling machine. So it was a perfect project for the router. It's nice flat stock, very easy tool path. So I spent a little bit of time using VCarve Pro and laying it out based on the dimensions that were posted on CNC Zone. And I started making up a set of these so that I could put them inside my machine. One of the things that you need the angle iron for was they're a form of reinforcement on the ends, and they keep the chips from going down around the sides and underneath, and kind of defeating their purpose. So doing it this way, it's slightly modified streamliners. I got to put these in, and I got to tell you, it really makes the cleanup and of the chips so much easier, because everything's up on top and only the coolant drains down below, and I'm getting less clogging of the pump because of that. So that's a really cool project. It's nice that you can use your CNC router to make parts for another machine. So after I got done with that project, I've been looking around inside of the Facebook group, the hashtag CNC Router Tips group, and I'll put a link to the group in the show notes in case you want to check it out or maybe join it. But one of the guys was making some really cool wall hangings and textured wall hangings inside of his spire. And what he was doing was using a very large cove bit or ball nose bit style bit to make these patterns, and they're wavy forms and everything. And I started looking at this and saying, I never took the time to learn how it was done. And so I spent a few minutes in one afternoon going over it and trying to figure it out, and doing a little bit of research. And there was some really good information about how to model these things, and it turns out to be fairly simple process once you know it, and you can make some really intricate patterns and some really cool stuff. So I spent a lot of time playing with that, but I have yet to cut one out of material, because the only material I had around that was the right size to make these panels was MDF, and I really don't like MDF a whole lot. The dust from MDF just gets everywhere, and you're cleaning up the workshop for ever after you use that stuff. So I try and avoid it now. When I first got started with the CNC router, I used a lot of MDF for a lot of different projects, and things were fine, but it was always the issue of having to get up all the dust that this stuff creates, because it's basically sawdust with glue that's molded under pressure. So when it breaks down, it under the cutter, it just goes right back to its sawdust form, and it gets up into the air and everywhere. And I'm just not a big fan of MDF. Everybody has their pet peeves, and MDF happens to be one of mine. But I'm really waiting on some better materials, maybe some more PVC or something to try on these patterns. So it should be fun. I encourage you, when you see someone doing something that's really cool online, to give it a shot, because you never know what you can learn. I've been doing CNC since 2000. Oh, goodness. Well, I can't even put a date on it now. As if you think back on all of the different CNC projects that I've been doing CNC for over 18 years probably. But you're always learning something new. It's always an adventure, and that's what, keeps me interested, keeps me involved, keeps me doing these podcasts for that matter, because I find new things that interest me, and I want to share them and help people to learn how to do them. So that's just one of the things that I like. Now, if you're a longtime listener to this show, you may have heard me mention Morrisville State College on a few occasions. It's a local college that's local to me here in upstate New York. And I do a lot of projects and am involved in, some things that they do at the campus there with my good friend John Geiss and the other folks there in the... Now, if you're a longtime listener to this show, you may have heard me mention Morrisville State College on a few occasions. It's a local college that's local to me here in upstate New York. And I do a lot of projects and am involved in, some things that they do at the campus there with my good friend John Geiss and the other folks there in the mechanical engineering technology department. They recently received a surplus CNC router table from one of the other universities. Morrisville is part of the SUNY system, State University of New York system. And when one school decides to get rid of equipment that may be still in good shape or whatever, they give the other schools a chance to pick it up so that the resource isn't wasted, and neither is the money that was involved. And so Morrisville was the recipient of this router table, and it was made by a company in Canada called Axes, which is kind of counterintuitive because it's spelled AXYZ. Now, I always looked at that. I've seen the company name before, and I didn't know that it was pronounced Axes. It just didn't occur to me. But when you look at it, AX, that's X, YZ. Z's, Axes. So it kind of is a cool name when you think about it. But anyway, we got this old Axes router, and we began to look to see what it would take to set it up and to get it running. And had a really neat arrangement in the base of it. It had a slide-out drawer on the front of it that contained the variable frequency drive, the 3 stepper motor drivers for the X, Y, and Z axes, and a few other electrical components and some relays and things, all in this slide-out tray. And it really is a cool system if you ever had to make repairs to this machine. You just slide that tray out and work on whatever you had to do and replace it, and you'd be back in business. So I was really impressed with that. There were a couple other things that were on it that were kind of neat. They have a pneumatic pressure foot which raises and lowers to contact the workpiece to hold down the part as it's being cut. So sometimes when you're doing cuts on thin material, it will shake and vibrate itself loose, and it'll break loose and ruin the cut. Well, this little pressure foot drops down and holds the material as you're cutting it. It's just a light pressure, just lightly touching that part and holding it down. I think that is so cool. I can't wait to see that in action. But just, a lot of little cool things about that machine. I think they're made somewhere near Toronto, Canada, or some place very close to there. Looks like an interesting machine. If this is one of their smaller ones, I know that they specialize in much larger machines. I'd kind of like to take a look at one of those and see what that looks like. So it was kind of neat. I thought you might find that interesting. I don't imagine these are inexpensive machines. I imagine they're, quite costly because, frankly, they're built very stout, and that usually costs. So anyway, it was interesting to get a peek at that machine. I think now that I would put it up somewhere on the level of a Cam Master machine or similar. I have a very high regard for the Cam Master machines as well. It's just the ones I've seen are built well, and I kind of like that. One of the advantages of running a group on Facebook for the CNC Router Tips gang is that I get to read your questions and try and learn from you what it is that you are focused on and what you're trying to learn about the CNC. It's one of the things that I ask when you apply for a membership to the private Facebook group is, what is your single biggest question about CNC right now? What's giving you the most trouble, that sort of thing. And, I get a lot of answers to this, a lot of different answers to this question, and I get a lot of the same questions as well. One question that came up that I thought was simple in the way that it was phrased, it kind of took me by surprise, because most people don't ask this questions. I mean, I get a lot of questions about, what is the feeds and speeds to use, or, what's the best CNC machine to buy, or things like that. This person asked the question, what is the best way to learn about CNC?
Today's episode is sponsored by The Maker's Guide, creator of the Triple Edge Finder. Get the edge you need, save time and frustration on your CNC project, and make setup a snap. Save time and material. Set up your workpiece on your CNC router table faster than ever. Accurately set your Z-axis height first time, every time. Automatically locate the corner or edge of a workpiece. Reset your starting point in the middle of a program. Quality crafted right here in the USA on US-made CNC machines. Get the edge you need today. Go to www.themakersguide.com/edge. The Maker's Guide. Useful tools for makers.
What is the best way to learn about CNC? Learn how to program a CNC. And I thought that was a great question with a fairly simple answer with a few caveats. In my opinion, the best way to learn about CNC is from a teacher. Somebody who's done it already before. The problem is there's not a whole lot of people teaching this sort of thing, or who have the time for it. One of the reasons that is a lot of times guys have invested a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of effort into learning how to do things with their CNC router table, and you're their competition. And so many times they will keep that information to themselves, and they won't share it. That is not the culture that's going on inside of the CNC Router Tips group. Our guys are very great about sharing information with each other and helping everybody out. And I really applaud the members of the group for keeping that spirit going, because, it's really neat. But what if you do need a teacher? Somebody to show you how to how to get going on a CNC. Many of you know that I am a Vectric dealer. I sell software and other things. I also sell Mach 3 and a few other products and things. But what many of you don't know is that I sometimes teach people how to use the CNC software and the CNC Router Table. There's not a whole lot of me to go around, but I do help people. Sometimes I help them for free, and sometimes I help them for a fee, depending on how detailed things are. But I'm not alone. There are many other people out there who are offering to teach CNC. And if somebody is making that available to you, it's something that you could use to shortcut your learning curve. And that's what it's all about. There's a very good course online for learning Fusion 360. Now, as I said, I'm a Vectric dealer. I generally focus on VCarve Pro and Aspire and Cut 2D and Cut 3D. But those are not the only softwares that I use. I mean, I've been a CAD CAM junkie from the day I first discovered it. I started in AutoCAD and then went on to Design CAD and then Rhino 3D and CAM-BAM and you name it. I've probably tried it. SolidWorks and Mastercam and all sorts of other things. I can get work done in pretty much all of them, even BobCAD. So I've had experience with a lot of different softwares and things like that, and I enjoy it. That's why I'm constantly trying to learn it. But probably the best course on Fusion 360, which is from Autodesk that I'm aware of online, is from a group called Titans of CNC. Now, there's absolutely no reason why I should be plugging another online service for CNC, except that this guy, Tyson Gilroy, does a wonderful job of teaching Autodesk Fusion 360, and his courses don't cost you anything. I just recently finished the one that they did for the CNC lathe. It's his rocket series where you build a rocket and from different parts. By the time you're done with this project, you've learned most of the types of cutting that you can do with a CNC lathe and how to program them and how to do them. And so, I followed that course in Fusion 360 and I've got a better understanding of that portion of it. I was already using Fusion 360 and having pretty good success on it. But now I feel like I have a better understanding of the lathe, and that was something that I simply didn't have. But there's also one for the mill or for the router table. It both applies, the same kind of thing, called Building Blocks Series, which he takes you through about 10 projects that teach you things like pocketing and profiling and things like that inside of Fusion 360. So if you're looking for a program to learn Fusion 360, there is the Titans of CNC Academy where you can check that out. Also, NYC CNC, John Saunders does a really good job with his Fusion Friday series on YouTube, where he teaches, you feeds and speeds and things like that, and how he's using Fusion 360 with his milling machines, everything from a Tormach to a Haas, full VMC machine. He talks about that sort of thing. So you might want to check that out as well. So there's a lot of resources out there. I will have links in the show notes to each of these websites if you want to go and check them out. They're awesome resources. They're both a bunch of great guys, and they do very well. So, I hope that answered the new user's question. In some places where you can go to learn CNC. One of the really cool things about being a member of the CNC Router Tips group is that there's sometimes giveaways, and one that's going on right now inside the group is from Mike Gancarelli. And Mike is a really cool guy that I met when I was in Florida over the Thanksgiving holiday weekend down visiting Disney. And, Mike and I got to know each other, and we started, exchanging information back and forth. And one of the things that Mike is doing is he wrote a screen set called Smart Screens for Mach 3. It's an add-on to Mach 3. It's actually not just an add-on. It's a standalone program that works with Mach 3, but adds functionality that Mach 3 doesn't have. And I know Mike's in the process of also writing a version for Mach 4, but that's still hasn't been released yet. But it really does some really cool automation things, like allowing you to use Wi-Fi relays to turn things off and on around your home, around the workshop. Turn on your dust collection system or a coolant pump, or all sorts of cool things. And he builds all that right into this software. So Mike decided that he would get a bunch of triple edge finders and give them away in order to encourage people to try his new software. And so you sign up and download this software, and he puts you into drawing for one of these edge finders. He's been giving one away a week for the last 4 or 5 weeks, and it's pretty cool. There have been some really good responses from the members, to receiving a triple edge finder and a smart screens from Ingenious software. And it's been really kind of cool to watch, because Mike has been taking the feedback he's getting from the members, and he's been making changes to the software to make it better, and to smooth out things. It's very cool watching somebody develop software. I've never been around anyone that was doing that before, so it's kind of cool seeing how he goes about this, and how quickly he responds to these things. So I'm really kind of psyched about this. If you want to check it out, he's got a 60-day fully functional trial of this software. You can go to NGENEYES.com, Ngenius.com. It's like Ngenius.com, and check out Smart Screens. I think you'll enjoy it, and it'll help a fellow group member out. So that's really cool. So check it out. I'm going to have Mike on the show and maybe talk with him a little bit about this and some of the other cool things he's been developing. He's got a convertible CNC router that converts to a plasma cutting table. And it's all controlled by relays, so you can swap from, using the router to using the plasma on the fly. It's really kind of cool, and he's got a built-in water table that drains and refills at his command. So, just really inventive guy. I think you'll enjoy hearing his story and some of the things that he's been doing. So check it out, and you can find our group on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/CNC Router Tips. And that will take you to our group page. So I'm going to call this episode done for now. I'm not going to edit this show like I normally do. I'm just going to put it up on the web and let you listen to it. I find right now that I'm the biggest bottleneck in the production series because, I don't enjoy editing these podcasts. So we're going to try something different. I'm not going to edit it. Whatever is here is here. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Please let me know. If you do, you can leave a review in iTunes. You can leave a comment in iTunes if you're listening there, or on Spreaker at Spreaker.com. You can find the show there. So thank you very much for listening into this episode of CNC Router Tips. I'm your host, Bill Griggs. Have a great day. I often mention many different types of software during the episodes, and hardware and cutters, and it can get a little confusing. So what I did was I put together a page on my website, CNCRouterTips.com/resources. And on that page, I list all sorts of resources there, from books to tools to software, all the things that I use that make my CNC experience better and easier. And I hope you'll check it out. So again, it's CNCRouterTips.com/resources. Now, if you'd like to have your question featured on the air, here's how. Need help? Ask me about your CNC router question on my podcast, the CNC Router Tips Podcast. I'll be glad to help, or try and get you the help you need. I want this podcast to be a fun and personal experience for everyone, and helpful. So let's keep it real and ask sensible questions. Please use common sense and show courtesy to everyone. That way everybody wins. Here are some guidelines to ensure that your question is qualified to be featured on the show. Please keep your questions under 1 minute in length. If it goes a little over that, that's fine, but don't ramble. If you have a website and URL, you're allowed to share it, but only once during the recording. Spammy or disrespectful or deeply private questions will not be considered for the podcast. If you need to ask more than one question, just make each question a separate voicemail. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. I'm your host, Bill Griggs, and I really hope that you have a great day.